We have all had painful events in our lives that can lead to depression, anxiety, addiction, or broken relationships. But here's a secret. It is not about what happened to us that causes suffering. It's the stories we believe about ourselves. Join us as we shine light on how to rewrite our stories, avoid the shadows of shame, and travel along the pathway to joy, love, and connection. It's the Finding Peace podcast with your host, Amazon best-selling author, Troy L. Love.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a really tiny episode of the Finding Peace podcast. If you've listened to many of the episodes over the course of time, you may have realized that the sound is different sometimes and the audio quality is different sometimes. And to be honest, that's because I've been doing it all by myself. I didn't really have any understanding of how to deal with audio quality. I had to learn how to use Adobe Audition to change things around. I had a really long and steep learning curve. But the whole reason why I started to do the podcast in the first place was at the invitation of Russell Brunson, who is a marketing guy. And in one of the trainings that I attended, he shared that it's really helpful to pick a medium and to get on there on a regular basis. He encouraged every day, and start telling people what it is that you want to tell them. Share the message that you have inside that you want people to hear. And he said, at the beginning, nobody's going to listen to it. So it's okay if it's not that great, if the quality's kind of crappy, and it's okay if you stumble around a little bit. He said, that's awesome, because that is part of what helps you become more familiar with yourself until you really get to know what it is that you're talking about. And as you do that, you begin to believe in yourself a whole lot more. Your confidence level increases. And so I said, well, what kind of mediums do I want to do? I love writing, obviously, because I'm a writer, but that's a long process for me. And then I thought, well, I could do YouTube videos or something, but that takes a lot of editing. And so then I said, well, what if I did a podcast? A podcast is super easy. I can just get in there and I can record something and I can put it up on a podcast. Then I realized after I started doing it, there's a lot that goes into that too. But that's what I had chosen. And so I began. And so I just started making podcast episodes. And then I had people who said, can I be a guest on your podcast? And so I started interviewing some of them. And lo and behold, 10,000 downloads later, people were listening to my podcast. So I began listening to some other people's podcasts, some that I really enjoy listening to. And one of the things that stood out to me is that many of them break their podcasts into seasons. So there's season 1 and season 2 and season 3, and that there's a certain amount of episodes that they put in each season, like they do on television. And I thought, wow, that's a really great idea. I should probably do that too. One of the things that I have had a challenge with doing the podcast is that originally I was hoping to produce a podcast every other week. And then I ran out of stories to tell. I mean, I could dig deep into the bottom of the basement and find something. And the second part was figuring out what was the question of the podcast. And I don't know why that was so freaking hard for me to figure out, but it was. And so I would put it off, and I would put it off a little bit more, and I would put it off a little bit more, and I'd ask people, hey, do you have a question for the podcast? And I wouldn't get anything. So I wouldn't produce anything for a little while. So as I started to realize that some of these people's podcasts that I really love, they have these seasons and they have 10 episodes in a season or 12 episodes in a season. I thought, I can manage that. That is something that would make my life a little bit more balanced and I wouldn't be so stressed out. So I made a decision to break the podcast into seasons. And then I thought, well, what season are we on? I don't know. So I'm just picking season 4. So this is the preview of season 4 of the Finding Peace podcast. We have some really great guests that are going to be on during the season. And I also have a buddy now who was a rapper in the 90s and is really familiar with how to do all the audio stuff. He's a genius when it comes to that stuff. And he is going to be my producer now. So I guess I'm moving up in the world a little bit. I'm really excited to introduce to you this season, season 4 of the Finding Peace podcast.
You've been listening to the Finding Peace podcast. If we added value to your life, let us know or give us a rating. Before you go, subscribe to the show and get new episodes as soon as they are published. Thank you for spending part of your journey with us. And don't forget to grab your free copy of the Amazon best-selling book, The Art of Peace, by going to www.troylove.com. Copyright Finding Peace Consulting.